There are 8 levels of self-awareness. Most people are living at level 3 or 4 and will never move. But here is what nobody tells you. Reaching the highest levels doesn't make your life better. For some people, it quietly destroys it. I'll show you exactly why before this video ends. By minute 9, you'll meet the neurological fact that reframes everything you believe about knowing yourself. Before we go anywhere, let's be honest about something uncomfortable. You clicked this video because some part of you suspects you're more self-aware than the people around you. That suspicion, that quiet confidence, is exactly where we need to start, because it is almost certainly wrong. Here's what's coming, and it's stranger than you expect. We're not building toward enlightenment. We're building toward a moment where the whole idea of self-awareness cracks open. Stay with me, because level 5 is where most people quietly fall apart. Organizational psychologist Dr. Tasha Eurich ran one of the most rigorous self-awareness studies ever conducted. Her finding, 95% of people believe they are self-aware. The actual number who pass rigorous testing, 10 to 15%. That is not a rounding error. That is almost the entire human race, confidently wrong about themselves all at once. You already know someone living at level 1. You might have worked for them. You've definitely been frustrated by them. They speak over people in meetings. They interrupt without noticing the flinch. They walk away from conversations genuinely believing everyone agreed with them. The smell of burned bridges doesn't reach their nose. This is the person who operates on pure autopilot, not because they're stupid, but because their inner world has no mirror in it. There is no moment of checking, no pause before speaking, no quiet review afterward. They live entirely outward, entirely forward, entirely sure. And in a narrow slice of situations, this works beautifully for them. Here is the detail that should stop you cold. A study of more than 3,600 leaders across industries found that the higher a leader's organizational rank, the more severely they overvalued their own skills compared to how their colleagues rated them. Seniority doesn't build self-awareness. It systematically erodes it. The corner office is the blind spot's natural habitat. And here's what makes that worse. The level 1 person rarely suffers for it. They get promoted. They get believed. The people around them absorb the cost instead. Stay with me, because the people who try hardest to fix this end up somewhere equally strange. Level 2 arrives the moment something cracks through. A comment lands differently. A relationship ends and you can hear your own name in the explanation. You feel it not as thought, but as a physical sensation, something tight and warm in the chest. This is the first flicker of self-observation. It's tender and it's new and it's about to be misused. At level 2, you start paying attention to yourself. You replay conversations in the shower. You notice patterns, the way your voice changes when you're nervous, the way you deflect with humor when something hurts. This feels like progress. The water is hot against your shoulders. The insight feels clean. You believe you're finally seeing clearly. Level 3 is where most people land and stay for the rest of their lives. This is the journaler, the podcast listener, the person who can describe their own attachment style at a dinner party. Reflection has become identity. They don't just practice introspection, they believe introspection is the same thing as clarity. It is not. That confusion is the trap. Because here is what Urich's research team actually found when they studied habitual self-reflectors. People who introspect more are no less likely to be self-deluded about their true abilities and motivations. More journaling, more navel-gazing, same rate of blind spots. The activity that feels most like self-awareness can be its most convincing disguise. You feel this if you've lived at level 3 long enough. You can narrate yourself brilliantly, your wounds, your patterns, your tendencies, while still doing the exact same damage you always did, but now with a more eloquent explanation for why it happened. The story becomes the shelter. The insight becomes the wall. Level 4 is the first place where something genuinely shifts. Here, you stop narrating and start noticing the narrator. You catch yourself constructing the story in real time. You feel the pull toward a comfortable explanation, and you pause before taking it. There's a friction here, small and specific, like catching your hand, moving toward something you decided not to eat. This is the level most people in therapy are working toward. But here's the part they don't tell you in therapy. Stay close, because at level 5, the awareness itself becomes the problem, and what happens there is the most important turn in this entire video. Level 5, this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. And I need you to stay with me here, because this is the level that surprises everyone. Most people assume that more self-awareness means more peace. Level 5 is the clinical proof that this assumption is dangerously naive. Peer-reviewed research published in the Annual Review of Organizational Psychology confirmed it directly. High self-awareness is statistically linked to increased anxiety and depression, not correlated with wisdom, not paired with confidence, paired with suffering. Because when you can see everything about yourself with precision, those flaws don't disappear, they enlarge. You know this feeling even if you've never named it. You're lying in bed and your mind is running a meticulous audit. The thing you said at 2 p.m., the way your voice went flat when you were hurt, the pattern you recognize, again, playing out in yet another relationship. You see it all with terrible clarity. And the seeing doesn't help, it just hums. At level 5, self-awareness becomes a kind of fluorescent lighting for everything wrong. You are perceptive enough to diagnose yourself accurately, but not yet free enough to hold that diagnosis lightly. The texture of this level is exhaustion. A low-grade, chronic, articulate exhaustion. You understand yourself precisely, and the understanding is a weight you carry everywhere. Level 6 is where something quietly begins to loosen. You're still aware, more so than ever, but you start to notice that the awareness itself has a quality, a flavor, a tone, and you start to become curious about that, rather than captured by it. The constant internal broadcast starts to feel like weather. Something happening, not something you are. And here is the moment I've been building toward, the thing that reframes every level below it. At the highest states of self-awareness, neuroscience has found something that should disturb you, because it means the self you've been so carefully observing may not be the solid, continuous thing you assumed. But first, you need to understand what happens at level 7, because it changes what the top means. Level 7 is counterintuitive in a way that should genuinely irritate you, because level 7 doesn't look like heightened self-monitoring. It looks like the deliberate release of self-monitoring. The person here has passed through scrutiny and come out the other side, looser, more fluid, less tracked. And their performance, their relationships, their presence all improve because of it. In the 1920s, psychologist George Humphrey identified what he called Humphrey's Law, and it proves this point with uncomfortable precision. When you consciously focus attention on an already mastered skill, you actively degrade your performance of it. The pianist who thinks about finger placement hits wrong notes. The driver who monitors their steering drifts. More awareness, measurably worse outcome. This is the centipede effect, the creature that walked perfectly on 100 legs until someone asked how it coordinated them, and then couldn't take a single step. And here is the strange, almost offensive truth it points to. Stay close now, because what comes next is the most important thing in this entire video. The person at level 7 isn't self-ignorant. They know themselves deeply, but they've learned to hold that knowledge in peripheral vision rather than staring it down. They move through a conversation without auditing each sentence. They give a talk without watching themselves give it. The self-knowledge is available, but it isn't running. That distinction is everything. There's a specific texture to being around someone at level 7. They're fully present in a way that feels almost old-fashioned, the kind of attention that makes you feel genuinely seen rather than evaluated. Their voice carries something unhurried. You feel it in your chest, that particular warmth of being with someone who isn't performing their own awareness at you. Level 8 is where the ground shifts entirely. And I want to be precise here, because this level gets romanticized in ways that flatten what it actually is. This isn't enlightenment as a permanent address. It's the experience, documented clinically, documented neurologically, of the boundary between self and world becoming genuinely, measurably thin. In 2006, neuroscientist Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor published her memoir of her own stroke. What she described is one of the most remarkable data points in the science of self-awareness. A single left hemisphere stroke simultaneously wiped out her inner speech, her autobiographical memory, her sense of individuality, and every self-conscious emotion she possessed. In one morning, all at once. What she was left with, for hours, then weeks, was a state of pure sensory presence with no narrator running alongside it. No internal commentary. No self watching the self, just warmth and light and sound with no one inside claiming ownership. She described it as euphoric. She also couldn't function. Both things were completely true at the same time. What Taylor's stroke accidentally revealed is something modern neuroscience has since mapped deliberately. The entire architecture of selfhood, the continuity, the identity, the feeling of being a specific person, appears to run on a single verbal narrative loop in the left hemisphere. Not some deep metaphysical essence. A loop, a running commentary, a habit of language. Modern psilocybin research reaches the same coordinates from a different direction. Clinical trials have now reliably triggered what neuroscientists call ego dissolution, a measurable collapse of the boundary between self and world, documented in brain scans, reported consistently across subjects. Not a metaphor. A neurological event, currently an active target for therapies treating disorders of self-awareness. Here is what both Taylor's stroke and psilocybin research are pointing at, and it is the single most destabilizing idea in this entire video. The self you have been so carefully observing, developing, protecting, analyzing, that self is constructed, real enough to live in, thin enough to dissolve. Stay here, this is exactly the payoff I promised you. And this is why reaching the highest levels isn't what you imagined when you started watching. You thought self-awareness climbed toward some stable, luminous, fully realized self at the summit. But the summit isn't a stronger self. It's a cleaner view of how the self is built, and what it's built from, and how quickly that construction can come down. Some people find that liberating. The constant hum of self-monitoring goes quiet. The fluorescent light at level 5 finally shuts off. What's left feels spacious and clean in a way that the earlier levels, with all their beautiful, exhausting precision, never quite managed. The weight of knowing yourself precisely simply stops being a weight. But some people find it destabilizing in ways that don't resolve quickly. When the narrator goes quiet, the question of who you actually are doesn't answer itself with something simple and reassuring. It echoes. That is the real danger the opening promised you. Not that high self-awareness is painful, though level 5 confirms it is, but that the highest level unsettles the question itself. So here is where we land. 8 levels. Most people at 3 or 4 forever. The top not a destination but a dissolution. And the neurological fact underneath all of it. The self you are observing is a verbal loop in your left hemisphere, real enough to run your life, thin enough to vanish in a stroke, a session, or a moment of genuine silence. If you are still narrating your emotions, you are at 3. If you watch yourself narrate, you are at 5. If the watcher has started to flicker, you already know which level you are at.